The Reformation in France, a war of faith that changed the nation by historian account. I don't really know much about it. I mean, I know obviously Christianity is split into Protestant and Catholics. That's what it is, right? And I mean, it's not just France. I guess most of Europe was fighting about it. Not support France in FIFA World Cup. I mean, I don't really know anything about the French team, you know? Like, if they have a good story, maybe I would support them, I guess.
In the 16th century, France found itself at the epicenter of a religious upheaval. New ideas about faith shook the foundations of the kingdom. The Reformation turned into a bloody struggle. How did a religious dispute lead to the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre? And why did one of the kings, renouncing his faith, say, "Paris is well worth a mass"? In 1517, a German Catholic priest and monk of the Order of St. Augustine sent a Latin-language work to the Elector and Archbishop of Mainz. It was titled Disputation on the Power and Efficacy of Indulgences. The priest was Martin Luther, and the elector was Albert von Brandenburg. The work later became known as the 95 Theses. Thus began the Reformation, one of the greatest schisms in the history of Christianity, which led to the emergence of Protestants and Protestantism. If you want to learn more about the Reformation in Germany and Martin Luther's 95 Theses, the Schmalkaldic League, and the Peace of Augsburg, we have already covered this story on our channel. Find the link in the description. Soon, France, a neighbor of the Holy Roman Empire, also came under the influence of the Protestant Reformation. At that time, the French kingdom was ruled by Francis I of the Valois dynasty, a patron of the arts and supporter of the legendary Leonardo da Vinci, an active participant in the Italian wars, and a fierce rival of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V of Habsburg. He also went down in history as the first influential European ruler to dare to form an alliance with the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent and established a long-term Franco-Ottoman alliance. During the reign of Francis I, the French Reformation developed in two consecutive phases. Initially, there was tolerance and adherence to a golden mean, avoiding conflicts with his subjects. Later, a period of suppression of reformist ideas began. As early as 1519, printer and humanist scholar Johann Froben, a close friend of Dutch philosopher Erasmus of Rotterdam, published a collection of Martin Luther's works. He noted that 600 copies were sent to France and sold in Paris. In 1521, a group of reformers, including French theologian Jacques Lefebvre d'Etaples and Bishop Guillaume Brissonnet, created the Meaux Circle. It was a reformist humanist group in the city of Meaux. They spread new ideas about improving the quality of Christian preaching and religious life. Later, the Meaux Circle included theologian François Vatable, scholar Guillaume Boudet, reformer Guillaume Farel, and even Margaret of Navarre, elder sister of Francis I.
I don't know anyone.
They all stood at the origins of the Reformation in France, and in 1523, Jacques Lefebvre d'Etaples was the first to translate and publish the New Testament in French. In the 1520s, the King of France was still tolerant of reformist ideas, while the French...
One hell of a picture, like, my man is posing like it's a Tinder profile picture, like, looking all handsome, just one finger on the baby sheep or something.
Aristocracy maintained the status quo and supported the monarch's policies. The Catholic Church, meanwhile, focused on defining the boundaries of orthodoxy, determining what could be considered heresy and what not. In 1532, the Waldensians, followers of the teachings of the lion merchant Peter Waldo, joined the Reformation in France. This religious movement had conflicted with the Catholic Church for centuries. It had a reputation for heresy, which influenced the French authorities' changing attitude toward reformers. By 1534, the situation had completely changed. The affair of the placards marked the beginning of the persecution of Protestants in France. It was a series of trials against heretics who distributed anti-Catholic leaflets in French cities.
Anybody who would disagree with you is an heretic. That's just what it is, right?
Paris, Blois, Rouen, Tours, and Orléans. After the night of October 17th and
Close to where I live, Rouen. I mean, not that close, but close enough.
18th, residents of these major cities could see anti-Catholic placards in public places. One of the placards, posted on the door of the king's bedroom in the Château d'Amboise, was taken as a personal insult by Francis I and a breach of royal family security. It was at that point that the repression of Protestants began. Social tension continued to grow. Later, several people involved in the affair of the placards were executed in front of the Cathedral of Notre Dame de Paris.
Damn, they're like really making this a feast. They're butchering people, burning them alive, beheading them, and burning them. Like, damn, they're really trying to do everything.
The presence of Francis I himself. It was because of the affair of the placards that French reformer John Calvin, in order to avoid persecution, moved to Switzerland. In 1536, he published his most famous work in Basel, Switzerland.
Isn't there like a religious branch called the Calvinist?
The Institutes of the Christian Religion. This theological polemical treatise in Latin laid the foundation for a new religious doctrine, Calvinism.
Here we go. Yeah. By the way, again, like you hear about all this stuff all the time: the Calvinists, the Protestants, the Catholics, and you see it in media all the time. But I feel like I've never went out of my way to really learn the difference in the belief or something. So even here, it's like I don't really know the difference that much in their belief, just that they're fighting because they have difference. Maybe it doesn't really matter why they're fighting, because it's still gonna sound to be nice about it stupid to me, since I'm not religious, right? So it's like, if you tell me like, why they're fighting, yeah, it won't really change much. But I still don't really know the difference that much. Actually, I could just Google it. Difference between Catholic and Protestant. One of the key divisions concerned authority. The Catholic Church holds the scripture and church tradition together form the basis of faith, while the Protestant emphasize the importance of scripture alone as the ultimate authority. So like only the word in the scripture matter. Yeah. I mean, okay, that's the difference. Probably because obviously like the church is very corrupt, right? Because it's human beings leading it. So I can see, but believing only on like stuff written a long time ago. Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, it's beyond me.
Treatise later became the ideological basis for French Protestants. John Calvin translated the Institutes of the Christian Religion into French and published it in 1541. A year earlier, Francis I issued the Edict of Fontainebleau, the first normative act of the Kingdom of France that officially established a policy of persecution against French Protestants, who were also called Huguenots. The edict imposed severe punishments for Protestantism, including public humiliation, confiscation of property, torture, and even the death penalty. Soon, the French king ordered the punishment of the Waldensians. Followers of early Christianity had joined the Reformation movement and were becoming increasingly militant. In 1545, the massacre of Mérindol took place. French troops under the command of Jean Meunier d'Oppede, the new first president of the Parliament of Provence, and Antoine Escalon des Aymars, who was returning from the Italian wars with 2,000 soldiers, killed thousands of residents of the settlement of Mérindol and destroyed over a dozen surrounding villages. Hundreds of men were sent to the galleys as slaves. At the same time, special heresy courts began to operate, known as Chambers of Fire, La Chambre Ardente. The first was established in the Parliament of Rouen.
Is he not saying that right? Or
1547, Francis I died. The throne and crown were inherited by his second son, Henry II of Valois. He continued his father's religious policy, which eventually became even stricter, as the new king considered all Protestants heretics. In 1551, the Edict of Chateaubriand banned the distribution of Protestant literature. The crown could also confiscate Protestant property. Much harsher punishments were introduced by the Edict of Compiègne, issued in 1557. The death penalty for all Protestants who published banned literature, created blasphemous images, participated in religious gatherings, or preached illegally. This edict later became one of the preconditions for the religious wars in France. Meanwhile, in Geneva, Switzerland, preacher John Calvin ensured the leadership and organization of the Reformed Church of France. Despite persecution, the number and influence of Calvinists in
I wonder what the Calvinist branch is like. What do the Calvinists believe? Is centered on God, sovereignty, declaring that God is willing and able to do whatever he wants to his creation. It states that God predetermines whether people will receive salvation or deliverance from sin. It's impossible for those people to lose their salvation. Difference from Catholic then? Yeah, okay.
French lands grew, as various social classes, including the aristocracy, preferred this branch of Protestantism. By the 1560s, the number of Calvinists in France reached approximately 2 million. More than half of the French aristocracy adhered to Calvinism. The Italian...
Which probably makes sense, right? I mean, they're the one with the most chance to read the documents and get into it.
Italian wars ended with the Treaty of Cateau-Cambrésis in 1559. France did not lose, but it was weakened and bankrupted. That same year, the First National Synod in Paris adopted the French Confession of Faith. It was a Reformed confession of faith and became the official doctrinal standard of the Reformed Church of France. In 1559, another significant event took place. King Henry II died due to an accident at a jousting tournament, and the French throne was inherited by his 15-year-old son, Francis II. This created a political vacuum and a struggle for power. The influential Duke François de Guise, uncle to the king's wife and Queen of Scots Mary Stuart, took advantage of the situation and placed Francis II under his guardianship. Duke de Guise became the second most powerful man in the kingdom. From then on, the aristocratic House of Guise, staunch supporters of Catholicism, played a leading role in French politics. In response, the Protestants attempted to kidnap the young king. The Amboise conspiracy of 1560 was led by Jean de Berry and Louis de Bourbon, Prince of Condé. The plot was uncovered in advance. Hundreds of suspects were arrested or killed, and de Berry was executed. Louis de Bourbon was also suspected, and within a few months he was captured and sentenced to death. It was after this conspiracy that the term Huguenot, whose origin is still debated by scholars, came into widespread use to refer to French Protestants. That same year, the young King Francis II died of an ear infection, and Prince Condé took advantage of the political chaos. He was released by order of the Queen Mother, Catherine de' Medici, who hoped to secure the support of the influential aristocrat. Meanwhile, another son of the late Henry II and Catherine...
Assassin's Creed 2, right? Or am I crazy? I think it was Medici, yeah?
10-year-old Charles IX of Valois became King of France. In 1561, the first street clashes between Catholics and Protestants broke out. The religious wars were already looming. The following year, Catherine de' Medici, who acted as regent for her underage son, attempted to prevent conflict. The Edict of Saint-Germain in 1562 granted limited tolerance to the Huguenots, but it could not stop what was to come. The massacre of Vassy marked the beginning of the French Wars of Religion. Duke François de Guise organized an armed assault in which dozens of Protestants were killed and hundreds wounded. De Guise became the leader of the Catholics, while Louis de Bourbon led the Huguenots who had risen against the crown. The next key event was the Siege of Orléans in 1563.
Yeah, we know
The
that.
Huguenots,
We've
under
seen
the
the video.
command of General François de Coligny, were losing the war and retreated to the city, which was besieged by François de Guise. The Catholic forces, representing the French crown, hoped to force the city's surrender and gain complete
This is on when Jeanne d'Arc comes in.
victory over the Protestants. However, de Guise was assassinated by the Huguenot Jean de Poltrot. His death weakened Catholic influence over the French crown, forcing a temporary compromise.
Maybe
Both
not.
sides signed the Peace of Amboise, which granted the Huguenots limited religious freedom.
Wait, is this the time of the 100 Years' War or not? No, I think it was actually earlier, so I'm stupid. The 100-Year War is like before that, right? I forget.
At the same time, de Guise's assassination marked a turning point. It triggered a bloody vendetta among the French aristocracy and a series of high-profile assassinations of prominent leaders from both sides. 4 years later came the so-called Surprise of Meaux. Dissatisfied with the crown's failure to uphold promises and the continued restriction of Protestant rights, Huguenot leaders Louis de Bourbon and Gaspard de Coligny attempted a coup to seize King Charles IX. The plot failed,
It
and
never
the war
ends.
between Catholics and Protestants resumed. In 1569, the Battle of Jarnac took place. Catholic forces under General Gaspard de Sceaux defeated the Huguenot troops of Louis de Bourbon. Bourbon was wounded, captured, and executed. Gaspard de Coligny
Can't feel
then
bad for the
became
Bourbon.
the leader of the Huguenots. In 1571, the Seventh National Synod of French Reformers was held in La Rochelle, a major Huguenot and Reformation center in France. Among the attendees were Queen Jeanne III of Navarre, her son Henry of Navarre, Prince Condé Henri de Bourbon, Admiral Gaspard de Coligny, and other high-ranking Huguenots. The Gallican Confession was read to them, and they all signed it. From that moment, the confession became known as the La Rochelle Confession. The following year saw the most infamous event of the French Wars of Religion. The notorious St. Bartholomew's Day massacre of 1572 occurred just days after the wedding of the king's sister, Margaret of Valois, to Henry of Navarre. That same year, Henry became the new ruler of Navarre and was the grandson of King Francis.
Definitely seen this painting before, and I feel like it was in school, so while I don't remember any of this, it was probably covered in school, I assume.
The First's brother. Catholics killed many political opponents and carried out a massacre of Protestants. Behind the massacre were Queen Mother Catherine de' Medici and the de Guise family. They initially planned to assassinate Huguenot leaders, but the fervor of French Catholic mobs turned these political murders into a mass slaughter. Young King Charles IX, aware of the planned purge, ordered the killings to stop. Nonetheless, even the king's will could not halt the brutal display of religious intolerance. Many French Protestants were killed, including Huguenot leader Admiral Gaspard de
Things
Coligny.
always go the same,
Henry
no?
of Navarre managed to survive. The massacre spread beyond Paris. Estimates of the dead range from 5 to 30,000. The loss of leadership paralyzed the Huguenots. Those who survived became radicalized. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre remains one of the most infamous examples of mass murder and is forever etched into the history of France. In
Not the first,
1574,
not the last.
Charles IX of Valois died of tuberculosis. According to a popular theory, the horrors of the
Damn, they really have a bad run. Like, died from jousting, died from like illness, died from tuberculosis. I mean, I guess everybody, like, there was much more of everybody was equal in this time, right? Even with being rich, there was no miracle cure for like most disease, right? Well, today, you know, it's much more the case that being rich is like such an advantage when you're sick. But back then, yeah, it was really like even the kings and queens just died like flies.
massacre had taken a severe toll on his physical and mental health. He declined over the next 2 years. The king had no sons, so he was succeeded by his younger brother Henry III, who had previously ruled the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth for 2 years. He was the third son of Henry II and Catherine de' Medici to ascend the French throne. In 1576, Henry III of Valois issued the Edict of Beaulieu. It granted Huguenots the right to public worship throughout France, except in Paris and at the royal court. Protestants were allowed to build churches and hold synods. The French king did this under the influence of his brother and heir, François de Valois, the youngest son of Catherine de' Medici and a supporter of the Huguenots. That same year, another Henry, the son of François de Guise, who became duke after his father's assassination, founded the Catholic League. It is also sometimes referred to as the Holy League. The organization sought to eradicate Protestantism in Catholic France and opposed the implementation of the Edict of Beaulieu. Still, the first phase of the League's existence ended after just 1 year. King Henry III effectively dissolved the organization.
The Holy League will be part of leading the crusade or something?
In 1584, François de Valois, the only close male relative of his brother the king, died of malaria. As a result, the heir to the throne became the Protestant Henry of Navarre, namesake and cousin of Henry III. This development worsened relations between the French monarch and the Catholic faction and led to the reactivation of the Catholic League. The League opposed the Huguenot leader Henry of Navarre and rejected his claim to the throne. Later, the organization gained the support of King Philip II of Spain, the Catholic Church, and the Jesuit order.
That's a crazy cool looking logo. IHS. They cooked with their logo.
This marked the beginning of the War of the Three Henrys, a three-sided conflict between King Henry III of France, Huguenot leader Henry of Navarre, supported by the Kingdom of England and Protestant German princes, and Henry de Guise, leader of the Catholic League, backed and financed by Spain. In 1588, a key event occurred, the Day of the Barricades. It was a popular uprising in Catholic Paris against the moderate religious policies of King Henry III of Valois. The revolt was orchestrated by Duke Henry de Guise and the Catholic League. In the end, King Henry III secretly fled the capital and never returned. Under pressure from the de Guises, the king was forced to sign the Edict of Union. This document cemented a close alliance between the French monarchy and the Catholic League. Henry III also pledged to fight against Protestants and to disinherit Henry of Navarre. These actions placed the French crown in a dire position. But much changed later that same year when Henry III ordered the assassination of Duke Henry de Guise and his younger brother, Cardinal Louis. The king summoned de Guise to the Château de Blois, where royal guard...
That's why people say all the time, like, you know, you don't need to make something like Game of Thrones. So much of history is literally there for you to do. I mean, and you don't even need to write the plot outside of, like, I guess the characters themselves, because there's maybe not enough about them, but the actual events, the twist and turn, I mean, history is just like, you know, endless backstabbing and wars and reversals and betrayals and all that.
Guards killed the eldest son of François de Guise. Louis was also summoned, then arrested and executed. Young Charles, son and heir of Henry de Guise, was imprisoned in the city of Tours. The deaths of the de Guise brothers shocked the Catholic faction. From that moment, they came to despise Henry III. The Catholic League declared war on the French monarch, and Pope Sixtus V threatened him with excommunication for the murder of a cardinal. The French king then allied with his cousin and heir, Huguenot leader Henry of Navarre. In 1589, 2 members of the royal family died. Queen Mother Catherine de' Medici passed away from pleurisy at nearly 70 years old. She had been the mother of 3 French kings. Shortly thereafter, King Henry III of Valois was...
I wonder, like, kind of a random thought, but was the woman in history that had the most like king, emperors, president, whatever you want to call it, as kids. 3 sounds like a pretty good one.
Stabbed to death by a Dominican friar, Jacques Clément, who sought revenge for the murder of the de Guise brothers. Thus, the leader of the French Protestants, Henry of Navarre, outlived the other two Henrys. He became the new king, Henry IV the Great, the first monarch of France from the Bourbon dynasty, which would rule for 2 centuries until the French Revolution. In 1593, after 4 years of fighting for the right to wear the crown, Henry IV Bourbon converted to Catholicism. Interestingly, he did so under the influence of his official mistress and advisor, Gabrielle d'Estrées. According to a popular but unconfirmed story, the French ruler said of his conversion, "Paris is worth a mass." Since then, this phrase has come to symbolize the willingness to sacrifice principles for
I was gonna say, like, you know, the girl is so good that it convinces him to change his religion. But I guess if you want to put it into a bigger context, yes, he did it for Paris, he did it for France. Not because, you know, not because of a woman, sure.
Practical gain. In order to be accepted by French Catholics as king, Henry changed his religious affiliation. Just a year later, he was officially crowned in the Cathedral of Chartres. In 1598, Henry IV issued the Edict of Nantes, which granted French Protestants broad rights in a predominantly Catholic state. The Huguenots were granted religious and political freedom, freedom of conscience, amnesty, and the restoration of their civil rights. But Catholicism remained the dominant religion. France became a more tolerant and pluralistic society, though not all problems disappeared.
When
The
does it
French
ever?
wars of religion came to an end. Between 2 and 4 million people had died from violence, disease, and famine
Man. Phew.
caused by the long conflict. The Bourbon dynasty replaced the Valois on the throne, and the St.
That's the worst
Bartholomew's Day
result.
massacre became one of the most infamous events in world history. Despite the compromise reached, French Catholics never truly accepted the Protestants or their new king. The Huguenots, in turn, viewed the monarch as a traitor to their faith. Henry the Great survived at least 12 assassination attempts. The last, in 1610, was successful.
Oh,
The
damn.
French king who had brought peace to his war-torn country.
I think it's a pretty good ratio, though. I mean, you know, 11 successful survival of assassination attempts. I mean, you know, you can't win them all, but an 11 combo is pretty good, I think.
Was murdered by a Catholic fanatic, François Ravaillac. During the reign of Louis XIII the Just, son and successor of Henry the Great, conflicts between Catholics and
I was gonna say, like, there's still this 30-year war coming up, so things are far from over.
Huguenots reignited. And in 1685, the famous Louis XIV, known as the Sun King and grandson of Henry the Great, issued the Edict of Fontainebleau, which officially revoked the Edict of Nantes.
Didn't last long, huh? Yeah, I mean, I can't say I really knew any of that. As always, no need to be surprised. As I said, I wasn't really someone who listened in school, so it's not surprising. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. It's like, it just feels like most of history, like people dying, people fighting, the rich and powerfuls, like leading to a ton of deaths over like religion or like we should be the king. It's the same as always. It's the same as always. You know, here's a link. One is just a short collab, okay? Things never change.